Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. In particular, I want to give a big recognition and shout out to the Deputy Secretary of HUD, Adrianne Todman. Many of you may or may not know her. Let me just tell you that I had the opportunity to have a chat with her just a second ago, and she's amazing.
I paid him a lot to say that. Good job.
So thank you so much for joining us, Deputy Secretary. So being in HUD, can you just explain to us, HUD handles a whole range of things. Most of us think public housing, but HUD does a lot more.
HUD does a lot more, and you're right. A lot of people think about the work we do in public housing, in our rental assistance, but did you know that HUD also finances healthcare facilities? In areas that can't finance healthcare, nursing homes on their own, HUD actually acts as a financer there. HUD is also the #1 entity that helps moderate income families access homeownership for the first time. And we know how important that is to generational wealth. We provide community development funds. We actually, even though our name is Housing and Urban Development, we do a lot of work also in rural neighborhoods as well. We have a lot of housing counselors all across the country to help folks who are feeling nervous about their first purchase or feeling nervous about perhaps they're not able to meet their mortgage debt and they need some assistance. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I didn't even get into our work that we do on manufactured housing. So, you know, we have to think creatively, and this forum is about innovation and resiliency. And one of the things that we know is that we have built housing the same way for decades and decades and decades, and we have to be more innovative because of the housing supply issues that we face. HUD actually is the entity that manages the national code for manufactured housing. So we are really driving our manufactured housing providers to incorporate innovation and some cost reductions for people so we can get more supply out there.
You know, it really is amazing the different aspects of our lives that HUD touches. And what's so exciting is that with the investments that the Biden administration has been making, it's going to have an even deeper impact. Can you tell us about some of those investments and what does that mean for our communities going forward?
Yeah, you know, this is while I feel blessed to be in this job, it is an amazing time to be able to be your deputy secretary at HUD. And so much of that is because of the investments that the president has been fighting for and the vice president has been fighting for. You know, the American Rescue Plan, not only are we helping to house tens of thousands of individuals and getting folks who are unsheltered into homes, into apartments, we're really excited about that. We're working with our friends at Treasury with their state and local fiscal recovery funds. These are funds that, you know, local leaders like yourself can use for a wide range of different initiatives, and we're really encouraging local electeds to use those funds for housing and gap financing, again, to deal with the housing supply. We have the Inflation Reduction Act. I was really excited to be at the White House with the president, vice president, and, you know, scores of other people to celebrate the Inflation Reduction Act, and I am thrilled about all of the investments that are going into resiliency and really doing what we need to do to make our green economy strong and resilient, and also helping with the impacts of climate change. You know, and at HUD, we have about $1 billion, and when I think about the scope of the bill, that's a small amount, but $1 billion that's going to really retrofit many of the subsidized housing that we have across the country. But that $1 billion is going to be matched with like $27 billion in a new green bank initiative that our friends at EPA will run. Another $9 billion that's going to go specifically into disadvantaged communities. So really excited about the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act in terms of resiliency and really being responsible to the planet.
You know, that's really amazing, and it's also timely. You know, at least in my life, I've never seen a housing crisis like we have now, at least an affordability crisis, as we're seeing right now. And it seems to be in every city, every place in the entire country. And in the city of Providence, so we set out to tackle this in a comprehensive way. So we realized that we needed a comprehensive plan. And what we realized is we didn't know exactly how many units we would need going forward, you know, how much we were building each year, and how do we close the gap. So that plan was really, really fundamental to our work. Now, I know that you've been working on a national housing supply action plan. Can you tell us about that?
So I've been in this industry for a long time. I'm not going to say how long, but let's just say it's been a minute. And this is the first time that I've seen a White House double down on the need to increase the number of units we have in this country, and not just rental, home ownership as well. And so just a couple months ago, the White House put out a White House strategy on housing action plan. And inside of that plan, it's just braided together all of the different federal departments that actually are inside of the housing ecosystem. So HUD, clearly, but Treasury, U.S. Department of Agriculture, our friends at Veterans Administration, all of us, FHFA, all of us are working together to figure out how do our programs come together to help the American people. I'll give you one example of one of the things that we're looking to do. In addition to saying to Congress, here are the resources that we need to really get more supply built, we're also saying, what are things that we can do? You know, we have funds, we have a lot of programs, some of you probably use our funds, and say, it's a little complicated. So one of the things we're trying to do is really streamline and look at how housing funds inside of HUD complement the housing funds inside of Treasury. And I was joking earlier that my counterpart Treasury and I have a daily dialogue, it feels like how can we just work stronger and better together? And that's the strength of the action plan. The whole point was we can't work in a silo. It's going to take all of us. You know, it took all of us to kind of get where we are. It's going to take all of us to get out of it. And I'm really excited that the White House has brought us together, and we're really working on a daily basis to make a change.
Deputy Secretary, so that national action plan, how do you see that, or can that national action plan, how does it sort of come together with the local action plans? And you know, I can tell you from our experience that one of the challenges that we've always had working with the federal government is that you know, we'd like to have a little bit more input as regulations are drafted and you know the rules are drafted. How can we ensure that you know there's that dialogue back and forth so that the national plan informs the locals and the local plans also inform the national?
Thank you for that. So, you know, so number one, I encourage you, because I'm sure that last night everybody knew I was going to be here, and they Googled, you know, housing action plan, you know, all about it. If that didn't happen, then I encourage you to go and, if you care about the housing ecosystem, look at the plan, read it. I'm happy to hear your ideas about ways that we can improve the plan, things that you might be hearing or doing locally that we can improve the work that we're doing. So I think it's a symbiotic relationship, as you said. We can be stronger with the work that you are doing. But I would also say part of the plan is doing exactly what you said. You know, the federal government, we can be a little complex. I know that's a shock. And so one of the things that we promised to do was to take a look at our existing programs and figure out how do we simplify it. I don't know if many of you have had an opportunity to meet Secretary Fudge, who's the Secretary of HUD. She's a former mayor. And I remember one of the first times we sat down and talked with each other, because this is my second tour at HUD. I was there in the late 90s, so I know the building. But when I was sitting down with her, she said, you know, Adrianne, I've been a mayor, I have been a congressperson. I never knew HUD did as much as it does. Just like how we began this conversation. She said, we got to do a better job of letting folks know. And so it's been great to experience the department through her eyes, because it's refreshed the way that we think about our work. She's very customer focused. What are we doing to make sure that we're getting to the people? What are we going to make sure that mayors, maybe even mayors in this room, understand all of our programs? So now we have a book that and I think that some of the staff here has copies. We have a publication to really teach folks the ABCs of HUD. And what we're doing now is looking at an initiative that's called Our Way Home. You know, what's happening in Providence might be different than what's happening in San Francisco, what's happening in Milwaukee, what's happening here in Miami. And we recognize the difference, and we recognize that HUD's tools will work differently in each one of those areas. And so we're trying to formulate ways to give like a how do you use HUD's toolkit to fit what your needs are. And so we're really excited about that.
I'm excited about that as well. Thank you for that. So one point that you made earlier that I think just resonated so much, you know, with me as a mayor, you know, there's a lot that you can do, but the reality is that there's only so much you can do. You can't do it alone. You need partners. And you were emphasizing that the federal government can't do it either. It's about public-private partnerships, and especially we're here at a smart technology conference. Can you talk to us about some of the ways that HUD engages with the private sector, and perhaps even, if you may, ways that perhaps tech-oriented companies they might have a role to play in solving some of these national housing challenges?
Well, you're absolutely right. We can't do it alone. I mean, that's absolutely true. One of the ways that HUD has been working very closely with the private sector, quiet as it's kept, so much of the way that housing is built now is actually fueled by the private sector. HUD's funds are there to fill the gap, to make it more affordable, but it's really fueled by the equity that the private sector is bringing in. And here's what we know. We know that many employers, tech or not, many employers are feeling the constraints of lack of affordability in and around their company. And they're saying, how can I find qualified employees who will move closer in? And so they're really putting a lot more investment into and knowledge creation into ways that we can improve our affordability issues. Another is we've been working very closely with our partners at FCC. And the White House negotiated with several service providers with FCC and working with HUD to make sure that we can bring no-cost to low-cost internet and broadband to low and moderate income families. And so there's a whole campaign that we have right now to make sure that families have access to the internet. I don't have to tell this group the importance that kind of connectivity has to have these days. We know that. And so we're trying to make sure that the folks that HUD houses, the folks that all of you are helping to house, are able to access internet as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think I remember high-speed broadband internet's going to be available to every American at a cost of no more than $30 a month. That's really amazing.
That's right. It's the Affordable Connectivity Program. That's exactly it. And there's a new campaign we kicked off with FCC to really try to streamline the way that people can apply. And, if you can hear my voice and, you have the ability to get the word out about this particular program, I encourage you. I mean, this is an opportunity to really put good dollars to work and make sure we're helping families along the way.
Broadband is getting closer and closer to this point where it's just almost like a utility where every single person must have access to. And it's just encouraging to see that every child, every American is going to be able to just be part of the conversation, be in the game when it comes to the 21st century challenges. So the last thing that I wanted to cover is, a big part of HUD's role is creating strong, vibrant, resilient communities. And one thing that a lot of folks don't know is the work that you all do around disaster recovery. Most people think about FEMA. Sure, they come in, but then HUD has an important role as well.
Absolutely. I think the description would be FEMA's there day one, but HUD is the ones who are there when the headlines go away after the storm. Congress provides HUD with disaster recovery funds, and I would say even here in Florida, Florida's received about over $2.5 billion from HUD over the past 5 or 6 years in disaster recovery for the various hurricanes that's come this way. And what we are trying to build into the use of those funds is a sense of not just resiliency. Let's make sure that we're building back in a stronger and more resilient way so that we can try to harden our systems and withstand the next storm, because we know there's going to be, sadly, a next storm. But also, how do we build in equity into that? How do we make sure that the individuals who are most harmed are able to come back home, actually physically, but also be able to regain some of the wealth that they may have lost because their home went away. The other thing that we're doing is investing in mitigation. We've been doing the same thing I said earlier. We've been doing the same things the same way for a very long time. There's so much innovation out there as it relates to how do we make sure that we're hardening, our electrical systems and whatnot. And our funds go a long way in getting that done, and a lot of folks don't know that. And so I think that sadly, this is one of HUD's biggest programs right now. Just this year, we provided $5 billion to 10 states and 10 cities for all the storms that occurred in 2020 and 2021, and now we're looking at what we need to do with the storms of 22. But here's the thing about those funds. We are encouraging the states who are our grantees to be smart and to innovate. And I think that there's a lot of innovation in this room. There's a lot of folks here who probably have the next big idea. I really encourage you to reach out to us at HUD, but more importantly, reach out to the entities who are actually creating the action plans for the disaster recovery, because we are looking for those big ideas to make sure that we can withstand what's to come.
That's wonderful. Before we sign off, can you, so you spoke about big ideas. What are you most excited about right now in this landscape?
Wow. You know, you never let a crisis go to waste, right? And Lord knows that we have seen a whole lot of stress and anxiety and things that's happened to us during the pandemic in 2020. But there's a lot of things that we've learned along the way. You know, we've learned that home means being safe. You know, that we were told to stay home. Well, in some states we were told to stay home. We know that we can work remotely. We know that we can integrate technology into the workplace in ways that we didn't think we could. I mean, if you think about the difference between March 13th, 2020, and perhaps November 1st, 2020, we went leap years into the future when it came to what the future of work was. Like, we literally leaped into the future. And I think we're trying to figure out now, how do we navigate this next place that's the next future for us? We learned a lot there. I will say the joy I get is that HUD plays such a pivotal role in all of those places. Our mission touches every single person in this country, even if they don't think it does. Every single person. It's not impossible that the park that you take your kid to is a park that HUD funded. It is not impossible that the apartment that your college-age kid could afford was built with HUD funds. I mean, we touch, I think, every American in ways that folks don't think about, and that inspires me.
Yeah, and your point about the expansion of broadband, that might be, you know, the most transformational idea of our lifetime.
Absolutely.
So please, everyone, join me in recognizing Deputy Secretary Adrianne Todman. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.